Hello and welcome back. My name is Dom, the trainer here at Trainwell, and today we're going to be looking at when methods go badly. Meaning, if you have a method or you create a program and you give it to a user and they do something you didn't expect, how do you handle it so your program doesn't crash? So, over the last couple of weeks, I've been talking about these markers, and we said last week that markers could have a draw function. We didn't worry too much about what that was. We just said that markers can draw. If you need to catch up, just look at the previous video. What we're going to do now is we're going to look at what happens when we don't have a marker, but instead put in a pair of scissors like this. How do we make sure that the program just doesn't crash? So if we go over here to my terminal, and I'm just going to use again some pseudocode to just show the concept, I have a list of markers. So here, this notice that we're using the variable called markers, and we have a list. I know it's a list. Why? Because it starts and ends with square brackets. So you can see here that I have green, blue, a pair of scissors, and orange. Now, what I want to do is I want to go through that list, and for each marker in that list, I want to draw. Okay, I want to use the draw function. I want to tell the marker to use its draw function. Well, how would I do that? Well, if you remember a couple weeks ago, we looked at for loops, so I can use that here. So for marker in the set of markers, and then I want to tell for each one marker dot draw. Okay. Now this is going to work okay until I get to scissors. Scissors doesn't have a draw method, so the program will just crash and say there's some sort of error. So to handle that, I want to use what we call a try-catch exception. When we're using exceptions, it's exactly that. It is exceptions to the rule in programming. And exceptions have two important parts and then one optional part. The first important part is try. What is the thing that you're actually trying to do and hope it goes smoothly? The catch is the error that you're hoping that you can get and then what you want to do with that error. So for sometimes you might just acknowledge that there's an error and try and move on. And then the last part is finally. You want to do this no matter what happens. So here in my for loop, I'm going to put in the marker draw method or function inside a try block. So here I'm going to say I want to try and draw with the marker. I want to catch if there's an error, and here I'm going to say let's call it something simple like not a marker exception, and we'll say, and we'll give it a variable called e, so it's just an error. And then I might say, well, in that case I just want to tell the user this is not a marker, so print not a marker. Okay, so what's going to happen here with my list is I'm going to get to green and blue, it's going to draw, it's going to get to scissors, it's going to catch it and say it's not a marker, but instead of just crashing, it's going to move on to the next thing. Because if you recall, I'm inside a for loop, so it's going to keep going to the next thing and the next thing, but now that I have this exception sort of breaker, it's not going to make the whole app crash. So it means that the user gets a nice smoother experience and I get to sleep at night. Okay. The last part is I might, no matter if it works well or there's an error, I might want to just say something like, I'm just going to do this. I drew something. Okay, there you go. I don't need to save it. Just want to do that. So, and there you go. So there are lots of other ways that you can make sure that the user, especially when you're doing things that require user input, someone is uploading a file or you're helping someone navigate to somewhere on their computer, there are lots of different ways you can make sure that they do the right things or you let them know what things you're expecting of them so that they can kind of cooperate with your program. But sometimes unexpected things happen, and these try and catch blocks are really useful to making sure that your program can handle it gracefully. So we've spent the last few weeks talking about the basics of programming. We talked about variables, conditionals, methods, loops, exceptions. So next week, our last week, I'm actually going to use this Create a Simple program and show you how we put all of these things together. I'll see you then.